Welcome to Stories from the Center of the Universe, the podcast about the human experience.
John Hollis, welcome to the Center of the Universe.
Hey, Paul, great to be here. Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to talk with you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation as well. Mike Woods connected us, I guess, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
He couldn't stop talking to you when we were at the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame breakfast. And I said, well, hook me up, man. Get John on my show. Help me out here. And so here we are.
Well, Mike's a great guy. And, he, of course, I'm sure he probably, told you some of the other stories too, which I'm sure I hear about as well. But those guys have been great. We've all had some great times at UVA and even well beyond UVA. So love him to death. So I appreciate him. And he called me and said, hey, you mind being my friend's show? Told him I'd love it. It'd be fantastic. So thanks again for having me.
No, I appreciate that. I'm not going to tell you how many listeners I typically get, John, because you're already here. All right, so let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up? Where were you born?
Yeah, I grew up in Fredericksburg. I was born in Washington, D.C. My father was in the Army. I was born at Walter Reed Medical Center in D.C., but grew up in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Went to public school through 8th grade in Fredericksburg. Then I went to Woodberry Forest, private school, for all 4 years, 9 through 12. Then went to UVA.
Yeah, growing up in Fredericksburg public schools and then going to Woodberry Forest in 9th grade.
Yep.
And look, public schools in Fredericksburg, I imagine you're a black guy, right? I mean, were there a lot of black kids in public school back then in Fredericksburg?
There really weren't. I mean, that's something I've written about in some of the books I've written, especially like in some of the advanced classes. And of course, my mom was a school teacher, so there's no question. She was a single mom raising 3 boys, so she knew how important education was to us. She stressed to us, even though we love sports. The first time you're great, you guys aren't on the honor roll, sports are gone. We knew. My mom in business with that. So she's always adamant that not only are our grades supposed to be good, but your behavior to be just as exemplary in the classroom as well. So my mom was one of those no-nonsense old school teachers. So I knew better than to cross her. So she stressed education from a young age. So she knew that putting us in schools like Woodberry Forest would open up doors and opportunities like no other schools in Fredericksburg could. So it certainly paid off. I mean, going to Woodberry Forest is the best decision I ever made in my life.
Well, we're going to come back to that in a second. But honor roll, I mean, that's a pretty high bar. Most parents or most athletes get the just pass and you get to play kind of thing or maintain a 2.0 or whatever it is. But honor roll, that's pretty rare air. And for all 3 of you?
I mean, my mom, I'm glad she held us to high standards. I'm glad she did because she knew we were all very bright and she knew we were capable of doing it. It's one thing if she didn't think we were capable of doing it. Like my younger brother and I went to UVA. My older brother graduated with honors from Princeton and went to UVA Law School. So we're all bright guys. She knew that. She knew what we were capable of doing if you apply yourself. And so, the fear of God is the greatest motivator in the world, let me tell you.
Well, were there any Mom of the Year competitions? Because I think she would have won if she had been entered.
She did a great job. And you don't realize just what an effort that is, especially again back in the day, a single black mother raising 3 black boys. You look at all the statistics, we should either be dead or in jail or something crazy. But all of us did really well. My older brother used to be the Assistant Secretary of Defense in the George W. Bush administration. And so everybody's doing real well. I never in a million years dreamed we're growing up, being raised by a single black mother. That do some of the things I've done, the experiences I've had. I mean, so I always tell people my story all the time, not because I'm special or my brothers are special, because we're examples of what happens if you make the right decisions every day. I mean, every day there's temptation. There's every day, I have plenty of friends who do stupid stuff. Some are dead, some are in jail, but every day you make a decision. I'm going to do what's right, not what's easy. And so, sometimes it's tough. Sometimes you want to go out and party and do stuff when you're in high school with your friends. I want to go out to somebody's party. I want to do this or that, but I got a 10-page paper to write or whatever, and, but you got to make those hard decisions every day and it pays off.
Well, when you went to Woodberry Forest, did you board there or were you a day student?
I did. My brothers and I, all 3 of us went for all 4 years, 9 through 12. Excuse me. And we were boarding students there.
Well, yes. You can't really get in trouble if you're a boarder at Woodberry Forest because nothing's within 45 minutes, right?
I think that's the whole idea.
It's literally the middle of Orange County.
Yeah. When going to Orange is like, a day on the town, it tells you about what kind of opportunities you have.
I mean, I don't think there's a stoplight within 45 minutes of Woodberry.
The crazy part is Orange is like a thriving metropolis now compared to what it was.
I don't believe that.
It's all relative, trust me.
Yeah, because it was nothing back in the day.
It's like blink and you miss it back in the day.
Well, I just remember the campus, or whatever you guys called it. I assume you call it a campus.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It was surrounded by cornfields back in the day.
I mean, it was 1,200-acre campus. It was a gorgeous campus. I mean, the facilities at Woodbury were fantastic. I remember I used to joke with some of the UVA coaches when I got to UVA that I had better athletic facilities in high school than I did at Woodberry Forest. And the sad part is back then, it was no exaggeration.
No, I don't think you were lying.
It was not exaggeration. And so that's not the case now. UVA has upped this game, obviously, big time as far as facilities and continuing to do so. But back then, Woodbury is a first-class private school, and it's done wonders for me. It literally helped make my career. I got my first major job in sports writing at the Gainesville Sun, covering the Gators, almost exclusively because of Woodberry Forest and UVA.
Wow.
I was interviewing with the publisher. I was an 11th hour edition to the Gainesville Sun to be the beat writer covering the Gators. I was to be the lead writer for men's basketball. So I would go to every game, every practice, everything, every game home and away, every practice, everything. And of course, the publisher is a Kentucky guy. And like most Kentucky guys, he fancies himself some sort of basketball savant of sorts, right? So, of course, he made it a decree. He wanted to meet all the potential basketball writers who came in to interview. And so I interviewed him, and we're talking. He was just making small talk. And he asked me where I went to college. And I told him UVA, and he was so excited. Started going off about Mr. Jefferson's University. That's when I knew I was in good shape then, right? When he starts going off about Mr. Jefferson's University and all that stuff. And then after like 5 minutes of going off about UVA, he asked me about where I went to high school. I told him Woodberry Forest. Turns out he used to be the publisher at the Culpeper Star Exponent a long time ago. He used to regularly play golf at Woodberry Forest on the campus with the headmaster. They hired me on the spot. And that was the springboard job that propelled my entire career. None of that happens without Woodberry Forest.
No, that's wild. Yeah, it's kind of like the VMI of prep schools, right? You go to VMI and you live in Virginia, especially in like the 95 corridor, you're gonna get a job just because you went to VMI.
I'm not gonna, it's done me very well. Let's put it that way. I always tell people all the time. Friends want to ask me of your connections at UVA or Woodberry Forest, which ones have been more beneficial to you in your career? And I always tell people it's Woodberry Forest. It's not even close.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense to me. All right, let's back up to pre-Woodberry Forest. Did you grow up in the city, or it was really a town back then?
Yeah, more of a town.
Of the city, but it was really a town.
Right, and Fredericksburg is different now as opposed to what it was then. Right, back then it was like a sleepy little town. Right now it's more of a bedroom, an outlying bedroom community of the D.C., but it wasn't back then. So it was still like a small little town then. Now it's got all the D.C. area traffic and everything else that goes with it. I don't know if it's good or bad, but
well, I mean, west of 95 along Route 3, it was all farmland, or just about all farmland, right?
Yeah, it's grown exponentially, and now it's like going down Route 3 is like driving down Route 7 in Fairfax, and I can tell you that's no compliment.
Yeah, or Route 360 or Broad Street in Richmond.
Right, right, Broad Street too. Yeah,
just a ton of overwhelming retail, right?
Yeah, and basically just no planning. Build a million homes. And just, keep the same roads that we had 40 years ago. What could go wrong?
Yeah, just sprawl and not. Yeah. All right. So when you were a kid, were you just playing sports as soon as you possibly could?
I did. I was a sports junkie. Played football, basketball, baseball. You get one of those deals. You get home from school, your friends are waiting for you. You go out and play 2 hours of football, 2 hours of basketball, whatever the season is. I remember my mom used to always say, only thing she asked, you get to go in and get out of your school clothes, put on your play clothes, and we'd play till it was dark, till it was time to come home for dinner. Then you do your homework and do it all over again the next day. But I used to love it. I mean, I love the competition thing, playing with your friends. You just don't, that goes. You just don't want to lose. Doesn't matter. You learn that you just hate losing. Your friends, but you make some great memories, great friends, great memories, and builds, the kind of like the building blocks of who you become. I mean, I always tell people all the time, sports is not just something I do or have done. It's who I am. When I was married, I used to get hurt all the time the last few years playing basketball. I still play every now and then, but I suffered torn Achilles and everything else. I remember my wife used to always yell at me, why are you still playing basketball? Why don't you just quit? Blah, blah, blah. And I used to tell her, it's not, she didn't understand. It's not, again, what I do. It's who I am. It's where I make some of my best friends, my memories. I learn to be competitive. In so many ways, sports is like life. You win and lose as a team. And when you lose, you know what? You don't like that feeling. So it makes you go back and work harder, do it better the next time. You learn to work with people who are different from you, with different colors, different socioeconomic backgrounds. You learn teamwork. You learn how to handle success. You learn how to handle failure. Those are all life lessons. And so I take those with me. So all of a sudden, then I was a sports writer, traveling all over the country. I got to do everything under the sun, all because of basketball. So the idea that someday I'm just going to wake up one day and just be totally done, it just wasn't realistic.
Well, you mentioned play with folks of different colors. Look, I grew up in a small kind of rural town, and then I went to St. Christopher's, and we played you guys in every sport.
And lost mostly.
No, yeah, we did. I don't think I ever beat y'all in football or basketball. Baseball, we trounced you guys pretty regularly. But the point is, if I had not played sports growing up in the public schools, because I was public K through 7, because St. Christopher's was predominantly white, I don't know that I would have had that much exposure to the black community. I really don't.
And that's the beauty about sports, though. It doesn't matter what color you are, what where your background is, what your daddy does, or whatever. If you can play, you can play. Doesn't matter what color you are. You can be green, but if you got game, game respects game everywhere,
and people want to play with game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No doubt. I wish there were more endeavors in life beyond sports, and there are other examples of this, but sports is the most obvious and most powerful, I think.
The military is another one. It's very similar. You bring people together again. It doesn't matter what your debt, how much money you have in the bank, or what you struggle to get through high school to get your GED or whatever. It doesn't matter. Can you get the job done? That's the bottom line.
Yeah, because you're doing life and death kind of stuff, and you want people that are really good at what they do.
Exactly.
It's not great. Yeah. All right. So growing up, it sounds like being raised by mom who had very, very high standards.
Yep.
You got your full dose of sports, but you also were going after high academic achievement.
Yep.
And going to Woodberry Forest, what was the transition like?
For me, I loved it. I mean, my older brother was there a year ahead of me. And I remember I made 2 visits up there to Woodberry. I was in 8th grade. And I just loved it. I've always had a strong independent streak. For me, the idea of getting away from home, living on my own, I loved it. I love the idea. I mean, to me, it's always been that way. In fact, I actually spent 5 years at UVA. I spent every summer in Charlottesville, including the one before my first year, started my first year. Because I was so used to living on my own and having, not answering to anybody, coming and going as I please. I love that. For me, it was a perfect fit. For other people, they miss their parents, miss their brothers, sisters, or whatever, friends from home. And I had plenty of friends from home too. But I enjoyed the growth I got as a person, being able to live on my own, travel or wherever I needed to go on my own, even as a 14, 15, and 16-year-old kid. I learned how to do it. The self-confidence you get from being able to live on your own and be able to do that stuff on your own. So when you get to college, I mean, college was nothing. I was more than ready for UVA when I got there. Already knew how to live on my own. Already knew how to, great study habits. Although, probably didn't use them as much as I should.
Well, so walk me through a typical Tuesday, say your junior year during basketball season. What was a Tuesday like?
We would have maybe 2 or 3 classes in the morning. Started about 8:30 or 8:45, I guess it was 8:45. We had breakfast. Everybody, I usually try to get up by 8:30, throw on some jeans, go to get a bowl of cereal or something, and rush to class by 8:45, and have 3 classes. And classes on Tuesdays and Fridays were done at like 11:30. Then you had a couple hours just to kick back, and athletic practices started around 3:00, 3:30. And then
that's a pretty unique schedule.
Yeah, it was very much like a college schedule. Like you might have one like French class maybe on Monday, but not have it again until Wednesday, that sort of thing.
Oh, man. So St. Christopher's, maybe I'm misremembering, but you did every subject. You had 7 periods. You might have a study hall in there, but you had 6 classes every day of the week.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, the variety. Like sometimes, like I said, sometimes you wouldn't have like a, French class or, for 2 days. So it gave you time to, if I don't want to do my homework, French homework at Monday night, I could do it Tuesday night or whatever, So again, it gave you responsibility. You learned,
you learn how to juggle.
Yeah, and manage your time, most importantly.
So were you studying like 2, 3, 4 hours a night?
Officially.
Is your mom still around, by the way?
Yeah, she's still alive. I mean, I didn't study near as much as I should have, and that certainly applies to UVA as well. I mean, I was always I was a very bright guy, and so things came easy to me. like especially in elementary and middle school. And I've always told people being bright is both a blessing and a curse, depending on how you use it. And early on, I figured I was not the most responsible person. I'll just say that, because I figured, well, I'm smart. I can get through it. I can just BS my way through it because I'm smart. And it worked often enough that you think you can get away with it. But eventually it catches up to you. And it did.
Yeah, I mean, it does for everybody. Well, and when you're a teenager, or even in your early 20s, your brain's not fully there.
No.
Being irresponsible is just kind of par for the course.
I was about 24, 25 when the light finally clicked on. And I, realized you can't do it just about being bright. You got to have work ethic to go with it. And that's when coincidentally, that's when my career took off. Weird, right?
All right, hit me with your favorite football memory from Woodberry.
Jeez. One time I was playing JV, and I was playing quarterback. My brother was starting defensive end in varsity football. We had a scrimmage with him, and he cheap shotted me. We scrimmaged like once a month. He cheap shotted me. I remember I threw the ball at him. We got into a fight. My brother and I in front of everybody, right? That was pretty ridiculous.
So tell me more about the cheap shot.
Oh, he hit me. I mean, I threw it. It was like a 20-yard out I threw. I was incomplete because I saw him coming, so it made me rush the pass. But he hit me anyway, even after I saw the ball land 20 yards down the field. So that tells you how late it was. And he laid me out.
Was it like that before y'all went to Woodberry?
Yeah, my older brother and I are very competitive at everything. He's a year apart, so I literally grew up behind him, had every freaking teacher the year right after him. He graduated with honors from Woodberry Forest. He got an early admission to Princeton. And he graduated with honors from UVA, Princeton, and UVA Law School too. So you can imagine, my angst on that one.
Yeah, I can't imagine you wanted to follow that show.
I was a good student, but I wasn't nearly as focused as he was academically.
Yeah,
I mean, he was locked in. He had good study habits. So it took a while for me to get to that point because like I was mentioning earlier, I thought I could just BS my way through it, and it didn't always work.
Yeah, but it generally worked. Right.
It worked enough.
All right. Do you have a favorite basketball memory from Woodberry?
I'm trying to think. Probably to me, it was always like the pickup games we play with all the guys in the open gym on Saturday nights. Again, you're at Woodberry Forest, so a lot of guys were on campus. What are you going to do? And so the pickup games that were Saturday nights were ridiculous. I mean, people were cutthroat. I remember that. That was probably my favorite things. Just talk junk with your friends and stuff like that.
And it sounds like you're naturally a gym rat. And by the way, you didn't have a whole lot of other options on a Saturday night. So
to me, it was beautiful, man. I loved it. I loved playing basketball all the time, and just couldn't get enough of it. Just playing basketball. So,
did you play baseball at Woodberry?
No, I tried to play lacrosse one year, my sophomore year. I remember I was trying out with the JV team, and like literally maybe the second or third practice, I was wearing gloves, and somebody broke my hand with the shot on the hand. And that was with gloves on, and that was it for my lacrosse days. Yeah,
lacrosse is hard. When I went to St. Christopher's in 8th grade, I didn't know what those sticks were. I had no idea. I'd never seen those before, and then I tried to actually just catch and throw, and it's hard. It's really hard.
Like anything else, it takes a while getting used to. But the thing I always liked about it is like the footwork was very similar to basketball, especially if you're playing attack. If you get good head fake, head and shoulders fake, stuff like that. Just lean your body, just kind of get a guy off balance. Look at a guy's feet. Same thing with basketball. You look at a guy's feet, you can tell which way you're going to go. I always used to love that as a basketball player. I got the ball in triple threat position. Look at a guy a lot of times because I'm right-handed, so a lot of times people cheat. They got one leg up higher than the other one, thinking you aren't going to go to your left. And I don't care if you're 100 times quicker than me. If I go by you on that side, you aren't catching me. And so that was it was the same thing. You look at people's feet; they told you everything.
Basketball, your favorite sport?
By far. And so for me, going to be a sports writer and cover basketball, I was in heaven. I was like, didn't get much better than that.
What is it about basketball that makes you love it so much?
I love the competition thing. That was to me is like you line up against somebody and you want to know you're better than he is. And the best part is when you know it and he knows it.
Yeah, it's probably the most intimate sport, right? You know when you walk out for the jump ball who you're going to be defending in man-to-man. And most high schools and certainly in colleges, there's a lot of man-to-man, and you're battling that one guy.
Yeah, I just love the competition. I love winning, and I was always the type of guy when our team lost. my friends knew to leave me alone about 10 minutes. Wasn't mad at them, and they knew that. Just mad at losing. I was never good at losing. After 10 minutes, I was fine. But those 10 minutes, just leave me alone.
That's pretty good for 10 minutes. I mean,
it may have been longer some days. Depends on who we lost to.
Are you still mad about some outcomes from 30 years ago?
About what?
About pickup games from 30 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
You're still mad about
that whole story I told you about Olden Polly. I'm sure, why not?
We're not going to tell it yet. All right, so you go to UV. Well, you could have played basketball at some.
I could have played at a smaller school. I could have played like an Ivy League, probably.
Yeah. Was that in the plan?
No, I always wanted to go to UVA. I grew up, like most of us that age, grew up watching Ralph Sampson and UVA, and it was a great school, and I just always wanted to go there. I mean, in fact, we had so many Woodberry guys there. Like I knew at least 30 or 40 guys who were at Woodberry before I even enrolled there. I'd go up to spend weekends sometimes in my junior year with Woodberry guys, and so to me it was clearly where I wanted to go.
So Ralph's obviously the biggest name to ever play at UVA, National Player of the Year 3 times. But when did you start following UVA basketball? I was probably 10 or 11.
Yeah, I was in middle school. Yeah, I was in middle school, probably 5th or 6th grade. I just love watching. I remember like in middle school, this was back in the day when the ACC was still 8 teams and the ACC tournament didn't start till Friday. I just remember like middle school teachers bringing in their TV on Friday. Of course, no work I'd done, but it was beautiful. Just sit there with your teachers and the whole class and watch ACC basketball.
Yeah, man, I miss those days of the original 8.
Yeah, I did too.
We were the original,
especially the round robin regular season schedule where you play each other home and away. I miss that.
Yeah, I miss that a lot. So who was on those teams back when you were 5th, 6th grade for UVA?
Ralph was there, Jeff Jones, Lee Raker,
Jeff Lamp,
Terry Gates, Jeff Lamp, all those guys. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to tell you a quick Terry Gates story. I'm at the Sports Hall of Fame. Did I tell you this the other day?
Mm-mm.
I was at the Sports Hall of Fame, and I go up to this tall guy. He looks like he's 6'8". He's a little bit older than me. And I said, "Hey, are you here for Hal Nunley? I'm guessing you're a Randolph-Macon basketball player." He goes, "No, I'm basketball, but not Randolph-Macon." I'm like, "Oh, really? Where'd you play?" And he said, "UVA." And I'm like, I there's no way I don't know this guy's name when he says it. But I didn't recognize him. It bothered me. And he said Terry Gates. I'm like, holy cow. So I sat there for, 15, 20 minutes talking to Terry Gates. He's one of my heroes as a kid.
Yeah.
Did you know that Lamp, Raker, and Terry Gates all played at the same high school in Louisville?
Yep. That's High School.
That is unbelievable.
That's a hell of a team.
Oh, my gosh.
That's a hell of a team.
Yeah.
I hope anything short of a state championship would have been disappointing.
Yeah, and Terry told me he was a year ahead of Lamp and Raker. He said they finished 1-2 in Mr. Kentucky.
Oh, wow.
Their senior year. It's pretty wild to have this two kids from the same school.
It was funny you mentioned that because like one time I was when I was down in Florida covering the Gators, we had Jason Williams on the team. J. Will, remember White Chocolate?
Oh yeah,
and he's I love that guy. He's an interesting guy. So one time I went to Charleston, West Virginia, and do a story on him, and I was up there talking to their high school coach because they also had Randy Moss on that team.
Oh yeah, they were ridiculous.
They also had another guy who played at Marshall, and they lost in the finals. I remember saying to the coach, "Who the hell beat you? The Lakers?"
Right. Because Randy Moss was a ridiculous basketball player.
Oh, my God. You don't see the video. Jay Will was throwing alley-oops to him from half court. I mean, imagine how freakishly athletic he was in the NFL. Imagine him in high school. Imagine somebody guard him.
Yeah, no chance. In West Virginia. There's no way there was a lot of competition against him. Yeah, that's wild. All right, so it was UVA or bust.
Right.
High school.
Right.
Where would you have gone if you didn't get the UVA?
I got accepted to Wake Forest. Probably would have gone there.
Okay.
Wouldn't have been quite the same time though. Same as good a time. I mean, Wake Forest is much more religious, and they don't have co-ed dorms and stuff like that. At least they didn't then. I don't know if they do it now or not, but they did. Yeah.
Wake Forest was still known as a Baptist college.
Yeah, yeah. So that was definitely a distant second.
UVA is the oldest secular institution in the country.
Oh wow!
Yeah, the first non-religious affiliated school in the history of the country. It's pretty wild. Oh, wow. Yeah, so you chose well. UVA.
Yeah,
really good choice.
Plus it was closer to home. It was Charlottesville was like an hour and 15 minutes from Fredericksburg, so it was far enough away from home I could get away, but yet close enough I wanted to pop in for the day or quick weekend to get home. It was easy to do as well.
And so you didn't have a tough transition going to Charlottesville.
No, like I said, I spent even the summer before my first year, that June. I graduated from Woodberry like May 20th, whatever our graduation was. And by June 15th, I was already staying with some Woodberry guys in an apartment in Charlottesville, taking summer classes.
I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah. I was going out every last night, too, having a hell of a good time.
Well, I mean,
kind of set the tone for everything else, let's put it that way.
Drinking you're not old enough to
no.
Yeah. It was 21.
But as you know at UVA, that's not much of a
well, back then.
Yeah, that's not much of a stopping you from anything. Let's put it that way.
All right. So your first year at UVA, you're taking classes. Did you go through Rush right away?
I did, but I ended up not doing anything. I got a bid at Sigma Chi and Sigma Phi, and I don't know, just wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, so I decided to just hold off for a year.
What was it, you think? Just at a high level?
Sigma Chi guys are all great guys. All those guys, they had great basketball players, too. I wanted to play some good players. And that was big to me. I wanted to play some good players, too.
No, I get it. It wasn't part of my rationale, but yeah, so you waited a year. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and Rush back then was 6 weeks of complete craziness.
Way out of hand.
I mean,
a lot of fun, though.
I don't think we could tell anybody how crazy it was. I mean, it just wouldn't compute for somebody 15 years younger than us.
No. My son will never hear any of those stories.
How old's your son now?
He's 19. He's a freshman. He's in college in Dublin, Ireland, going to University College Dublin in Ireland.
How did he pick an Irish school?
He loved the international relations program they had, and that's what he wants to get into, politics and stuff like that. And he's absolutely loving it. He's traveling all over Europe. In fact, I think the hardest thing for him is trying to get him back to live in the States after this. He's loving this. Like every weekend I'm going to Amsterdam or wherever, it's so easy in Europe. But he's loving it. So I spent a lot of time with him in Europe. I took him over to Ireland in September, met him in Reykjavik, Iceland for his birthday in November, and then I met him in London in late January.
I was just in England 3 weeks ago. My daughter's doing a semester abroad in Brighton.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Beautiful country. Yeah.
England has such amazing history. I mean, we think we have old history here. It's nothing like Europe.
Right. Exactly.
And Ireland's that's pretty cool, man. Ireland's got a ton of history too.
It is. I'm gonna go back. I definitely want to go back.
Well,
so we're there.
I'd go back 3 times a year if I were you. If your kid's going to be there 4 years.
Yeah, I'll definitely be back a few times. I got this trip to Vietnam coming up in September, so right now I'm just kind of geared up on that. So yeah. I'll do it after that.
I imagine it's hard to focus on much else given your Vietnam trip. I don't think we're going to talk about it tonight. Maybe we get to that trip at a high level.
Sure.
All right. So what did you study at UVA?
Foreign affairs major.
And that became sports writer.
Yeah. People always look at me funny when I say that, but I was like, you do a lot of writing in foreign affairs. I mean, because all the classes are just midterms and finals, right? There's no thesis and, nothing, but you had to be able to be a good writer. And I just knew once I finished school, I was like, well, didn't see myself doing the 9-to-5 coat and tie thing. It's boring. It's nothing what I wanted to do. I was good at sports. I was an excellent writer and just kind of lucked into getting a job in sports. I mean, which is, and I can't emphasize that enough, just how lucky I was, because UVA at the time, as you remember, had 2 student newspapers, the University Journal and the Cavalier Daily. I never worked for either one of them. It was always like, well, I'll do it next week. That was kind of like my life story in college. I'll do it next week. And the next thing you know is you finish school and, well, I have no experience. Oh, how the hell am I going to get a job? I just lucked into it and just BS my way in getting a job. And the hardest thing in sports is just getting your first job. Getting your foot in the door is by far the hardest thing. And I got very lucky with that.
Yeah, I think it's obviously true for sports based on what you're saying, but I think it's true for a lot of endeavors. You just got to get the first.
It is, but more so in sports because there's so many fewer jobs. There just aren't that many sports writer jobs.
Well, I definitely want to talk to you about this. We're not going to get to it tonight, probably, but the idea of high school sports coverage where I live, and I think we talked about it briefly in our first conversation. It's bad. It's a
shame. That's a shame too, because the kids deserve it, but also it's a huge market for it and demand for it. I mean, parents, everybody, they just want to see their kids' name in the paper, And I used to tell people as a sports writer all the time, though, you don't get your scholarships or don't get scholarships because of what's in the paper. A lot of parents didn't understand that. I know a million college coaches in football and basketball. They don't read the newspaper. I mean, if they do, there's nothing there they didn't already know. They watch film.
Right.
That's they don't look at the whether your kid's in the newspaper or not. It's not going to make a difference whether he does or doesn't get a scholarship. Coaches watch film and they go to those summer camps. It's how you play against comparable competition. That's where you get scholarships.
Yeah, but you want, as the kid, you want to see your name in the paper.
Sure. You want something you can post up, a souvenir for your kid's high school career. Who wouldn't want that, And it's a great thing, You play on the Friday Night Lights it's a great thing. High school football is fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic.
Well, and if you're a kid who comes off the bench in a blowout and that's the only time you play and you score and your stat line shows you scored that night, your mom is cutting that out and framing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So I know you did a few things at UVA. You eventually joined a fraternity. You were a cheerleader. I think you mentioned before we started recording you were a mascot. I did not know that about you.
Played rugby too.
All right. So which one do you want to tackle first? All right. Let's go with cheerleading. Why cheerleading?
Oh, let's see. What was her name?
Okay. I mean, that's one way to meet the opposite sex.
Yeah, it was along those lines. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hey, look.
It worked out, though. It worked out. So we had a cheerleader live in our dorm first year. She came to our dorm, in our apartment in Lambeth, and begged. They were desperate for guys. So figure why not?
You're 6'1", strong guy. I mean, what's not to like?
And it worked out great. I was on the same weightlifting program as the football team. I was bench pressing over 300 by the end of the year, dunking with two hands on occasion, usually one-handed, but I could stand and grab the rim with two hands flat-footed. I mean, I was in ridiculous shape.
And you did the cheerleading thing all 4 years?
No, just 1 year. 1 year was plenty.
And that was just your first year?
That's my third year I did it.
So you were there for 5 years, and you chose the middle year to do it? And then
it was weird. She was really good looking.
Were you partnered up with her?
No. Mm-mm. In any way.
All right, moving on. But, so you were the mascot the same year, like with cheerleaders?
Briefly, yeah. I did stuff on the back end with it. Mostly cheerleading. I did some mascot stuff though.
Okay. All right. And then fraternity, you eventually, or it sounds like your second year, decided to join one. What was it about your fraternity that made you want to join?
They're just great guys, and there are a lot of Woodberry guys there, so it was a sense of comfort and familiarity. There were actually a lot of private school guys there, but that wasn't a factor either way. Just really good guys. So like Mike Woods and a whole bunch of other guys. So
Yeah, you had two Ashland guys in that fraternity, Mike and Jay Hugo.
Ted Schubert. Ted Schubert, right?
And Ted, sure. Yeah. You had Ted, Jay, and Mike Woods.
Yep.
That's probably why you joined it, just those three guys alone.
We had some good times.
And we're not going to talk about it.
Right.
All right, so we're at 33 minutes. Anything else about UVA that you want to talk about?
I would just say that I just love my experience at UVA, and I know it's one of those things. Probably you can probably understand it as well. Like you get older, you appreciate it a lot more. I was young, I was stupid and impetuous, and took a lot of things for granted. But you get older, you take it for granted. You really appreciate it a lot more. And I still have a lot of friends in the athletic department I stay in touch with. So it means a lot to me. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a sports guy, it's a pretty good place to go. And by the way, when we were there, we really saw football turn around. Basketball was really good. I think we were third in the country my fourth year, right after you had graduated. But we were competitive throughout your entire time there, right?
Yeah. For me, even after I finished school, I became a sports writer. I was covering a lot of UVA games. I was still getting back to a lot of games. Only this time as a sports writer in the press box and on the sidelines. Like I covered that UVA Michigan game at the Big House in '95. Still mad about that one. Up 17-0 with 12:55 left. Mercury Hayes, Scott Driesbach to Mercury Hayes as the clock hit 0. I was right there in the Michigan end zone when he did it. I was just like, "You got to be kidding!"
Well, do you remember we had lost to Clemson like some ridiculous number in a row?
Yeah, we were up 30-7 at halftime. I remember I was at that game. Yeah.
Well, there's another game where we were up 28-0 and lost.
That's it, 28-0. It was in Charlottesville. That was the game I was at. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the year after I graduated, and I take two of my buddies, and they're both, one's a closet Tech fan, one's a closet UVA fan. Neither one of them went to either school, but I was so upset. And then they just smelled blood. And
I remember they scored a touchdown before halftime. We all knew it. And the funny part is, at the time I was covering the Redskins, right? And Terry Allen was a star running back for the Redskins. And he and I became really good friends. He gave me so much grief when he saw me on Monday.
It was awful. It was so bad. It's the biggest variance between feeling great during a game and feeling awful 45 minutes later.
Still doesn't beat that loss to Georgia Tech. We're ranked number 1. I was at that game too.
I was at that game.
That's still worse. 14-point lead at home, and you lose it. You're ranked number 1.
John, I brought 3 of my friends from my childhood, my dad, one of my dad's friends. Like, we were number 1 in the country. Scott Sisson kicked the game.
Yeah.
I don't know which one's worse. I don't know which one.
That was worse because we were ranked number 1. You knew as a UVA fan, that was it. It was a one-shot deal. You'll never see number 1 ever again. My biggest regret was not going to the corner before the game and getting one of those at Minster's. They were selling these AP Top 10 shirts. They had a listing of the AP Top 10 of that week and not buying that T-shirt before the game. That was my biggest regret because we'll never see that ever again.
Yeah, and we ended that season not great.
Oh, yeah. They fell apart like a cheap pair of sneakers. It was ridiculous.
Like the Sugar Bowl was so upset they invited us to the Sugar Bowl that year.
That was ridiculous. That whole season was ridiculous.
Well, it was a really talented team, super talented team.
You know, the funny part is Matt Blunden he's a very good friend of mine. Matt's the AD at Woodberry Forest now.
Is he really?
Yep. So I see him all the time. We talk all the time. So, we still laugh at those things.
so Matt Blunden and I went on a double date when we were back.
Oh, get out of here. I'm going to call him tomorrow.
He doesn't remember. I guarantee. I knew him because he was the quarterback of the football team, and he played basketball.
Yeah.
And he was not super talkative.
No, he wasn't. Yeah.
Hopefully he's a little more outgoing than he was on that day.
I played against him in some of those pickup games at U-Haul. They never guarded him. He was 6'7", like 230 or whatever. He was, I wasn't guarding him, but
he was a really good athlete.
He's a really good athlete. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely great guy too.
And he's at Woodberry now.
Yep. He's like his 5th year as the AD now.
Where's he from originally?
Pennsylvania. Somewhere in western Pennsylvania somewhere.
That's right. Yeah, that's really cool. That's funny. Small world, man.
It is. It is small world.
All right. So your first gig after college is at the University of Florida.
Nope. I was actually the Potomac News in Woodbury. Is my first full-time job.
Okay.
And like anything else, you start out like answering phones, covering high school high school football, high school field hockey. I remember covering a whole bunch of high school field hockey stuff. This is one of the things you pay your dues, and that I was fine with it because I had such a steep learning curve because I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never worked at any student newspapers, and so I had so much to learn. So I was just happy to take any assignment that came my way. And like anything else, you get better, and then the better you get, the more assignments you get, and better assignments. But after 2 years, I started covering the Redskins for them.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so but again, you show you can do the job, and they give you better assignments. And I was covering the Redskins my last 2 years for them. They sent me to the Super Bowl in '96. I was out in Arizona for a week covering the Super Bowl. And like the other day when we talked on the phone, he talked about Ken Harvey. Ken Harvey is one of my favorite players when I was covering the Redskins. One of my favorite memories of being at the Super Bowl was running into Ken and his son. And we spent 2 hours having dinner and playing pool. Me, Ken Harvey, and his son.
Ken's one of the nicest people on earth.
Exactly. How do you meet Ken Harvey? You love him. He's such a good guy.
Yeah, and what a story he has. I read his book. He grew up in a tough situation, and he just made the best of it, and he worked hard the entire time to get to where he got. Yeah.
Wow. That was this January '96 covered the Super Bowl. And then I'll never forget, I covered the Olympics in July '96 in Atlanta because we had a couple of local guys, Jeff Rouse and Mark Lindsay, the diver and Olympic gold medal swimmer from Fredericksburg. And both those guys were childhood friends of mine. And so I was down in Atlanta for the Olympics. I was in Centennial Park when the bomb went off.
Oh, gosh. Were you close to it?
Yep. I was at two of my Woodberry friends were with me because they couldn't get a hotel room anywhere close. They were staying with me in the media hotel. And we'd been out, having a good time all night. And there's been fireworks going off all night. And so when it first went off, everybody stopped for a second. we were dancing with people, and you stop for a second, kept dancing. Then you see people just bum rushing out of the park. And walked out. We see people just bloody everywhere. It was a bag full of nails with a bomb in it.
Yeah.
And so there were people who was hurt everywhere, because it was like shrapnel flying everywhere. And my friends were laughing because I'd come from a press conference in Buckhead, so I still had like a notepad and pen in my pocket. I just go and met them straight away. And they didn't laugh, but automatically I turned into reporter mode, started talking to cops, started talking to people who were right there. We walked by the very spot maybe 20 minutes earlier. So it weren't for the grace of God, it could have been us.
Yeah. I mean, it's pure.
I won almost every Virginia Press Association award there was because I was basically the only reporter there live on the scene. And it was hard for me because you feel like it was like you feel guilty about that. I felt guilty about that award because you feel like it was all other people's misfortune and blood. But it opened up a lot of doors for me, got me a lot of notoriety. I got a job from CNN, job offer from CNN about 2 months later. And then I went to CNN, moved to Atlanta. You
were just doing your job, right?
Yeah, but still, you're young. It's hard. And you see all that carnage and you see people just bloody and just everywhere. And like, I don't know if you remember the photographer who died of a heart attack. Yeah. We saw that. I was right there. I saw him blue and laying in the middle of the street.
And it was awesome. This is 6 years after you graduated college.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're still young.
Yeah. It was rough. So, then years later, my brother, as I told you, the Assistant Secretary of Defense, he was at the Pentagon. And he just, by the grace of God, he wasn't there in the morning of 9/11. Like 80 members of his staff were killed. And so we was joking, we're two of the luckiest guys in the world, probably.
Wait a minute. So, I mean, like, I don't remember the numbers exactly, but was it like a couple hundred people that died at the Pentagon that day?
I think it was like 189 died at the Pentagon.
And 80 of the 189 were on your brother's staff?
Yeah. He decided at 10 o'clock the night before to go down back to the UVA Law School for some conference or something, because that's where we went to school. And otherwise, he got to work every day at 6:15. And so I, of course, was in Atlanta. I just assumed my brother was dead or severely wounded underneath the rubble. I already packed a bag in Atlanta to come home to bury my brother. I had been in his office. I covered a game at the Naval Academy that weekend before. So I had been in his office. He showed me his office at the Pentagon on Sunday, September 9th, less than 48 hours earlier. So I knew exactly where his office was supposed to be.
Yeah, he would have died.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I feel very blessed,
That's some heavy stuff for both of you.
It is.
I mean, he knew all 80 of those people that died.
Yep. It was tough for him. Their only crime was they came to work that day. Didn't done anything. Okay. I remember and of course I was in Atlanta. You couldn't get through on the phones anywhere. I just remember he was in Charlottesville. They mobilized the Charlottesville National Guard, brought him under armed escort back to the Pentagon. And they were on the way back to the Pentagon. He called me, told me he was still alive. And then he met with Secretary Rumsfeld and everybody else for several hours. And then they went out and helped pull out bodies, recovery. And I just remember him calling me and telling me it wasn't recovery. It wasn't rescue, it was recovery. Just charred arms, charred legs. I'll never forget the conversation as long as I live. And then he called me again about midnight that night. When it sunk in, he was just pissed. And I just remember telling him, use it. Use it. Remember this and use it. He was in charge. My brother was in charge of all military operations around the world against drug traffickers. Obviously, the drug traffickers use heroin and opium to finance their stuff. So the war on terror and the war on drugs went hand in hand.
Yeah, he was in the middle of it every day.
Yep.
Was he military?
Yeah, he got his commission at Princeton with ROTC, and he's a captain in the Army before he got out.
Wow.
Then he finished his law school. He was a senior legal counsel for the House Oversight Committee before he went to the Pentagon.
Your brother sounds very impressive. Horrible.
Don't tell him that. He'll tell you first.
No, hey, but we're not talking about him right now. All right. So, what's the best thing about being a sports writer?
Oh, it was easy to travel and the people you meet. I mean, never in a million years would I have guessed when I chose that route as a profession that I would do some of the things I've done. I mean, I've met some amazing people. Remember one time I spent 2 hours sitting in the living room with Hank Aaron in his living room in Atlanta. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, right?
It's surreal for a guy our age.
Exactly. So one time I'm sitting there talking to him. We're sitting there talking, and we're talking about baseball, the day he hit broke the record and all that stuff. And he stops me in the middle of talking. He goes, "John, would you like a glass of tea?" He gets up. This is in his living room. It's just two of us. He gets up and goes to his kitchen, pours us both a glass of tea, sweet tea, comes back.
One of the most humble guys you've probably ever met.
Yep. And I'm trying to, after I was leaving, we're shaking hands. I'm trying to act all professional. I made sure I got out of eyesight. You can see me. I got on my phone, called my friends. Oh my God, this is that. Hey, Garen.
He was the icon of icons for most of his career.
Yeah.
And for a lot of his post career.
And so things like that, then having breakfast with Colin Powell, November 2019, I got like maybe 2 weeks earlier, Deputy Secretary of State Richard Armitage is a good friend of mine. I've known him for 20 years. He called me and told me that Secretary Powell had read my book about Sergeant Davis, and he really loved it and wanted to talk to me about it. And so I saw Secretary Armitage a few days later. I said, I'll give you a book, sign it for him. You can give it to Secretary Powell. He said, no, you give it to him yourself. Secretary Powell invited us over to his house to have breakfast. We sat there for an hour and a half, me, Secretary Armitage, and Secretary Powell, just the three of us, and talk.
Dude,
it was the most incredible thing. It was incredible. I was so nervous the night before. I remember walk up to his doorstep with Secretary Armitage. All I could think of was like, don't trip over your feet, whatever you do.
Well, the irony there is Powell, I think, and you've met him, spent time with him, he comes across to me as a wonderfully smart guy who didn't do well in college, right? His grades were not great at New York City College.
Yep.
But he cared about the everyman. Is the impression I always had about him. Absolutely.
One of the most, he and Secretary Armitage are two of the finest men I've ever met. And to be sitting in their honor, their company, the three of us was absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
So let me go back to Hank Aaron real quickly. I worked in Atlanta for about 5 years, and I went to a few Braves games. And the first game I went to, I went to the spot where the 715th home run landed, and I thought I was in Nirvana. It was like the coolest thing ever. But that's just a spot in a parking lot. They obviously knocked down the old stadium. You spent 2 hours with him, and he served you tea.
I remember asking what it was like when those two white guys ran out of the field. Remember he was circling the field? And he described everything. How he's like, he didn't know what they were going to do, but he figured his best just keep running. It was incredible. I was just sitting here just eating it all up. It was like Christmas Day for like kids, like guy like us,
Christmas Day, birthday, New Year's Eve, all rolled into one.
Yeah. And so that, going back to your question that you asked, what's the best part? It was stuff like that. Going to the White House. I've probably been to the White House 25 times, various stuff. Then the Medal of Honor ceremonies. I remember the Medal of Honor ceremony. I was sitting right behind the Joint Chiefs, maybe 8 or 9 feet from President Obama. It was surreal. Absolutely surreal. And then like meeting people like Lex Luger, some other people you meet along the way.
All right, we're gonna tease the listening audience because I'm gonna have you back as long as we could schedule it because I know you're a busy dude. I'm gonna ask, how in the world did you connect to Lex Luger?
That's a good question. Basically, when the whole story happened with Chris Benoit, do you remember Chris Benoit killed his wife and 7-year-old son, then took his own life?
Yeah. And
so the AJC, it was outside of Atlanta in Peachtree City, which is like maybe 10 miles south of Atlanta, as you know. And so it was a huge, not only national story, but an international story. And so the AJC, I just decided to leave sports. And so I guess they wanted me on it because of previous sports background. I wasn't going to ask them why they wanted me to lead guy. They just did. And I wasn't going to say, why are you doing that? I knew it was a great opportunity for me because I knew it'd be extremely high profile. And so literally I owned that story. I absolutely owned the story. It was so ridiculous. I became like a de facto pro wrestling beat writer for one of the biggest papers in the world. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution took me off all my other responsibilities because all the wrestling stories, to this day, on AJC.com, my wrestling stories are the top 3 stories on that website's history. Because wrestling cuts across every demographic, black, white, rich, poor, young, and old. And they could not keep papers on the racks in and around the Atlanta area fast enough. So the publisher came down to the newsroom and told me all I had to do was just pro wrestling stories about the culture of wrestling, the drugs, the steroids, all that stuff for 6 months. So for 6 months, I was having either lunches, dinners, or lengthy phone calls with pro wrestlers every last day. And I was on the Greta Van Susteren show twice, 2 consecutive days as her guest, talk about pro wrestling and the culture of pro wrestling. It was the most surreal period of my life, probably.
There's no way you saw any of that coming.
No, absolutely no way. I was on NPR. I was everywhere, all over the world, because of talking pro wrestling.
So you had become the expert for that.
Yeah,
it's a disaster for that family.
Yeah, it is, and that's how I met Lex because I was doing a story talking about the culture of the wrestling, the drugs, and all that stuff. And Lex and I met at the Shepherd Center in Atlanta. And we had launched like 2 hours, just hit it off great. And we met again the following week for two more hours. And the story ran. I did a story on Lex, and I got more than 1,000 phone calls and emails from all over the world. The story I did on Lex. And I remember asking him then, it's like, you don't think about writing a book, Lex? I mean, this kind of interest. I've covered every major sporting event in the world. Nothing I had ever done had generated that kind of response, like the story I did on Lex Luger. But at the time, it was still too close to home for Lex. He wouldn't want to do it. And so we kind of, we stayed in touch a little bit, then kind of drifted apart a little bit. 2 years later, I hadn't heard from Lex in almost a year, probably. He still had my cell number, calls me up, literally says, "Hey, John, this is Lex Luger. Do you remember me? You wrote a story on me." Like I forgot who Lex Luger was. And he asked if I wanted to write a book with him. So that literally fell into my lap.
I mean, so Lex Luger was massive in wrestling for a really long time.
Total package.
And the total package, and his name is Lex Luger.
Yeah.
I mean, and tragically, I think they were dating at the time or whatever. But
She was his mistress, yeah.
She was a big deal for a long time, too. Yeah.
Yeah. And he is such a great guy. He got to know my family. He had him come over to our house for dinner several times. I mean, he's a great guy.
No,
I always tell people just to show that even bright people, smart guys, Lex is a very smart guy. Even smart people do stupid things.
Yeah, you told me that he was as interested in you as you were in him.
He's a great listener. I've told him that 1,000,000 times. He's a great listener. You wouldn't think so, given his background and who he was. Why would he care about, but he wasn't like that. That's not Lex. He introduced me to a lot of his friends. Like, there's one time, like, me, Lex, Nikita Koloff, and Sting went out for lunch, 4 of us. I took a picture and sent it to my brother.
You did it to everybody you know.
And Sting wrote the foreword for our book.
Sting a good dude?
He's a great guy, yeah. I love him because he's one of the few guys who stayed with Lex when the money ran out. It was almost cliche. Lex was making like $10 million a year or whatever, paying for all the bar tabs and everything. Then once the money dried out, of course, the friends ran out. And Sting and Nikita, the only ones that stayed with him, thick and thin. Yeah.
So look, we've got about 10 minutes left because I appreciate you giving me this hour. Let's talk about Lex a little more deeply. I want people to read your book. When did it come out?
2013.
Okay, so it's been a little more than a decade.
Mm-hmm.
But I imagine there are people that I don't know. Do you think most people that follow wrestling know it came out? I'm guessing they do.
We got a lot of attention when it came out. I mean, like anything else, it faded over time, but we got a lot of attention when it came out.
Yeah, I mean, people my age, So, John, I didn't know it came out, and I have friends who even now will talk about wrestling like it's the most exciting thing that they could possibly talk about.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is really crazy.
Were you into wrestling when you were a kid?
I wasn't a little bit. In college, we got into it. Me and my friends used to always, of course, before you go out, we used to call ourselves the Horsemen. That was the name of our team. So everybody's giving a 4 horsemen sign. In fact, there was one year, I guess my first year down in Florida, Ric Flair was always a regular at Florida football home games because, like, wife number 3 was a Gator alum. So, of course, the athletic department was only happy to give him a sideline pass with, like, Gator shirts and paraphernalia so he could wear the sidelines during those CBS games. And so I see him after the game, and one of the Gator coaches introduced me to him. I was like, Rick, can we take a picture? So we're both going like this in our picture. That was my Christmas card that year. Merry Christmas from me and the Horseman. My friends are so jealous.
Oh, I'm jealous.
I'll have to text it to you, actually. I have to find it and text it to you.
Oh, my God. That's going to be the picture I associate combined with this recording.
Oh, I'll definitely text you that then.
So look, when I was a kid, I had 2 older cousins who would just beat me up, but they were always pretending to be a professional wrestler.
Oh yeah,
I got choked out from
figure 4. I used to put my younger brother in a figure 4.
I can't tell you how many people I put in the figure 4.
Come off the top ropes. Well, that was the irony of the whole thing. And my friends were all drunk idiots in college watching 3 hours of Saturday Night Wrestling before you go out. And then the irony, like 10 years later, here I am talking pro wrestling on national TV. I mean, it's the most ridiculous nonsense ever. And here's the best part. You'll love this story. There was one night, remember the Harlem Heat?
Oh, yeah.
So I met one of the WCW PR guys, and I signed up for, like, as a sports writer during the summer, you don't want to look like you're doing absolutely nothing. I mean, you want to kick back. You don't want to do absolutely nothing because then they start signing you stories. And so, of course, every now and then you get a volunteer story. So I told the guy I was going to be in D.C. seeing some friends, catch up with friends and family. I was in Atlanta. I was like, I'm just going to go to Monday Night Nitro, whatever they call it, Raw, whatever it was. and the Harlem Heat were wrestling. And so like beforehand, maybe the week beforehand, the WCW people called me and said, the Harlem Heat will be in town doing promotional stuff. Would you like to go out to dinner with them? It's like, sure. Of course. Like, I hadn't watched wrestling since college, but you're not going to tell the guy, oh, no, I don't know what the storyline is, right? My brother, at the time, he was still senior legal counsel for the House Oversight Committee, and he's a huge pro wrestling fan. He still watches it regularly. So I called him. I was like, you know what?
Wait a minute. The Assistant Secretary of Defense is a pro wrestling fan?
Yes. Exactly. You wonder why our country is so screwed up. And so I called. I left a message because what I was going to do is I knew he would watch the storyline, watch it religiously. So I figured what I would do is just let him BS his way, and I just piggyback my questions off him, so they wouldn't know that they wouldn't be any wiser the fact I didn't know what the hell was going on. Right. So I called with a message saying, Andre, why don't you come with me, go at the Harlem Heat, and I'll just piggyback my questions off you. He calls back 10 minutes later, clear the schedule. We meet the Harlem Heat at a hotel in DuPont Circle in D.C. Stretch limo comes and picks us up. Me, the Harlem Heat, my brother, and me. We go to this restaurant. It was packed. It was in the summer along the river. It must have 500 people waiting in line. Limo pulls up in front. The manager comes up and meets us, opens his door. They take us to a table in the very front. We sat there all night, drinking hard, talking junk. And then we went out to some dance club till 4 morning. And WCW picked up the whole tab.
That's how those guys live, man. I don't mean the Harlem Heat. I mean wrestlers.
Yes, exactly.
And they do it the next day and the next day and the next day.
My editor wanted me to write a story on it. I remember telling him the next day, unfortunately, the best part is nowhere fit for a newspaper. The best part is nowhere fit for a newspaper.
Well, who was in the Harlem Heat?
I forget. Stevie Ray and Booker T.
Yeah, Booker T. He wrestled for a really long time.
I just remember the very first question. We sat there, and I remember thinking, we sat there at the table. Again, I was outside, and I was like, "What's the etiquette? Should I order a soft drink? Should I order? I didn't know what the etiquette. Should I order beer?" And so, of course, luckily, the waitress asked Booker T what they wanted first. They were doing like double bourbons. I mean, just to start. So I was like, at least get a beer. You can't look like such a wimp,
Well, they were probably 275 all muscle, and they could deal with that alcohol.
So they're doing double bourbon start out. So, of course, I started asking the very first question. I was like, so you guys really from Harlem? And he looks at me and goes, well, we've driven through Harlem. I looked at my brother. I was like, oh, what? And now this night's going tonight.
Oh, man. Holy cow. I did not see this pro wrestling conversation go this way, especially your brother being a fan. Oh, lifelong.
All I know is we came out of that dance club at 4 a.m, and the limo driver was still there waiting for us. He drove us all back home, so I appreciate that.
You were exhausted the next day, or
I did not feel fresh. Did not feel fresh.
Yeah, but Booker T and Steve, you said Stevie
Ray, yeah.
They're wrestling probably the next night, or at least 2 nights later.
Yeah, I was green for like a week.
Oh gosh. So Lex, at a high level, and we can get into this more the next time we get together. How did he go from doing like ridiculously well financially to like not at all? Is there like one cause, or was it a lot of things combined?
He had like owned 5 or 6 cars. I mean, just paying for bar tabs everywhere under the sun. And he had when he and Miss Elizabeth, she was his mistress. He had a townhouse financed by his bank guy on the down low. I mean, there's never a good way to get busted for adultery, but that is a bad way.
Yeah. She
died in their secret love townhouse, basically. It was an awful story. It really was. And, he was wrong for having an affair, but he genuinely cared for her. I went back. I was in the Cobb County Police Station. I've listened to the 911 tapes. I just really felt for him. Watch somebody care about literally die in front of you.
Yeah. That's there was a lot of mystery around that for a long, long time. Did the truth come out? I mean, it obviously came out eventually.
It wasn't his fault. I told Lex, as part of the coverage I did with the AJC, I pulled the tox reports and autopsy reports of more than 50 wrestlers. Remember, everybody's making a big deal about all these guys dying before the age of 50? Yeah. I remember telling Lex, the story isn't the fact that all these guys died before the age of 50. To me, the story is how any of them ever lived to see 50 at all. Yeah. They all had ridiculous amounts of alcohol, muscle relaxers, and painkillers in the system. Of the same, it was lethal cocktail. All of them had the exact same thing. Almost all of them died from a hole in the heart because of all that lethal cocktail. they would all fall asleep and their heart would stop beating while they were asleep. Almost every last one of them died that way. I pulled Miss Elizabeth's autopsy and report as well. She was 115 pounds, had cirrhosis of the liver, she had a 0.33 BAC when she died.
Oh, my God.
Jesus. She was trying to go toe-to-toe with the total package. I told Lex, it's awful what happened to her, but it's not your fault. She had some major issues.
Yeah, 0.33. I mean, 0.4 is death.
To me, it was a miracle she lived as long as she did.
Yeah, wow.
At 115 pounds, trying to go toe-to-toe with the total package.
Yeah,
That's not going to work out well for you.
If you're drinking that much and you weigh 115, you're not eating anything.
Right. The fact that she had cirrhosis of the liver spoke volumes too. And
Yeah.
she also had muscle relaxers and painkillers in her system as well. I mean, it was a miracle. It was a miracle she lived as long as she did.
Wow.
And I showed him the tox reports. I gave it to him. It was hard for him to see, but I just wanted him, I was trying to help him and tell him, she had a lot of issues. It wasn't all your fault. Although, I'd still feel guilty if I were him, and he did. But it wasn't his fault.
Do you keep in touch with him now?
I haven't talked to him in like 2 years. He moved back to New York. His mom and dad passed away. His dad passed away like 3 years ago. Mom about 2 years ago. And so I think he's still up in Buffalo, but he's doing a little more traveling now and doing stuff with WWE, as far as autograph sessions, that sort of thing. So he was here in Northern Virginia last week, but I was out of town and couldn't get up to see him.
Yeah. Luger was top of the wrestling heap, or he was one of the big five guys for, I don't know, a decade, maybe a decade and a half.
Yep. You always got to laugh. I always just tell him, me and my friends were always horsemen in college. I'll tell them all the stupid stuff we did in your name.
Well, I mean, the original four were Flair,
Tully Blanchard, and the Anderson brothers.
Yeah, and then Paul Smith was in there for a period of time.
Yeah.
I mean, and then Luger was part of it. Barry Windham, who, by the way, I learned recently was Blackjack Mulligan's kid.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild stuff. Oh, man. It brings back so many memories for me.
Yeah, it does.
I have a really good buddy who will be very upset that he was not part of this conversation. All right, so let's end with the most amazing championship game that you were at, either in person and reporting on it.
Well, that's easy. For me, I'm also on the media relations staff for the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. And so for me, it was at that Georgia-Ohio State game, that playoff semifinal 2 years ago. Best game I've ever seen in my life, by far. It was a who's who of NFL stars. It was ridiculous how much talent was on the field.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so actually, I'm going to make this. How do four teams, maybe six teams have all the talent? Why is that happening?
Because they go, it's almost like a which came first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing. You need money to have those kind of money. It's like even worse now with the NIL stuff, because now the chasm between the haves and have-nots will be greater than ever before. Because in order to recruit players now, you have to have an NIL pot to attract them. And of course, schools like Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, they can do it. But it'll be like five schools are going to get the cream of the crop. Everybody else is going to be fighting for scraps.
Yeah, and boosters get to contribite, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's wild.
And it opens a whole can of worms, because if I'm a booster, I'm an overzealous booster, I'm giving you X amount of dollars, $2 million. Guess what? I'm going to want access. I'm going to want some say in what goes on.
Yeah, and it's access to a 19, 20-year-old kid. Yeah.
Yep. I guarantee it's already happening.
Weird. All right, John, will you come back?
Count on it. Anytime, Paul. Thanks for having me.
No, hey, you are I haven't laughed this hard in a while, man. This is some good stuff. And we avoided the Herman Moore story for this recording.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll hear about that all the time, from my friends as it was. I'll just say this about that story. My friend, I told him, if you thought I was going to back down, you didn't know me very well.
All right, well, let's end with this one. And that way I'll tease it so people will listen to the end. Do you mind telling that story?
Sure. My first and only dunk contest entry, and it was against Herman Moore and two other people. We'll just say it didn't work out well for me. As it turns out, having a great primal scream and hanging on the rim are great skills, but they don't do much for your score in a dunk contest. I just remember people throwing ice at me as I walked from the track at Mim Gym as I was walking the court.
Why?
And I remember Mike Woods and everybody else over there laughing at me.
Mike's a pretty nice guy. Why would he laugh at you?
They seemed to be of the opinion back then that I was a little full of myself and needed to be humbled a little bit. And they may have been right, but it still didn't humble me. As I reminded them, because as I told Mike later, I was still the best player in that tournament. So.
Confidence can take you a long way, man.
That was the end of my dunk contest days, though.
Well, at least you were entered in one. Nobody considered putting me in one.
Yeah, Herman lucked out, got the best of me that day. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Just
real quickly, for people who don't know who Herman Moore is, he was the national high jump champion in high school his senior and junior years. The guy's vertical was
two-time ACC indoor high jump champion, first-team All-American wide receiver, NFL lottery pick, and Hall of Famer. But yeah, sure, I had a chance.
Because you didn't enter it yourself, right?
No, I did not. I was downstairs using the restroom, and my friends, in their infinite wisdom, entered my name. And I literally walked through the door back in the gym there at Mim Gym. I hear somebody say, "Next up is John Hollis." And I just no warm-ups, nothing.
Oh, that's a good story, man. It's a really good story. All right. Well, next time we're going to talk about Sergeant Davis. Talk probably a little bit more about Lex Luger and then more about sports reporting, man.
That'd be perfect. Paul, thank you so much. It's been fun.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Take care, man. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also really appreciate if you'd rate and review us. You can find us at scodupodcast.com.